Minji-Han stepped off the transport shuttle and onto the polished floor of the Galactic Combat Academy. The station hung in orbit above Terminus 7, a world she had only seen in briefings. Everything around her looked impossibly clean and advanced. Lights glowed without visible sources. The walls seemed to shimmer with colors she had never seen on Earth. Around her, alien cadets moved with purpose, their bodies strange and varied. Some walked on four legs, others floated, and a few had skin that changed colors as they passed. She adjusted the strap across her chest. The weight of her family's sword pulled at her shoulder, familiar and grounding. The blade had been in her family for 400 years, passed down through generations of soldiers. Her grandfather carried it in one war, her father in another, and now it was hers. The Academy officials had questioned why she wanted to bring it. Most had laughed, but they allowed it anyway, perhaps thinking it was some quaint human tradition. Behind her, Taeyang Park whistled low. He carried 2 large cases of equipment, his demolitions gear carefully packed and inspected 3 times before departure. "This place makes Seoul look like a village," he muttered in Korean. His eyes tracked the floating platforms that moved cadets between levels. "Stay focused," Hana Choi said quietly. She walked with perfect military posture, her datapad already open, recording observations. "We represent Earth here. Every action matters." The 3 of them were humanity's first representatives at the Academy. Earth had joined the Galactic Coalition only 3 years ago, after first contact changed everything. The coalition was vast, spanning hundreds of worlds and dozens of species. They had technology that seemed like magic, ships that crossed light years in days, weapons that could level cities, medicine that could regrow limbs, and now they wanted Earth soldiers to learn their ways. A tall figure approached them. Commander Vethrak stood nearly 8 feet tall, his forearms moving with practiced grace. His skin was deep blue, almost black, and his 4 eyes studied them with obvious amusement. He was Draxian, one of the Coalition's founding species. "The human delegation," he said, his voice translated instantly by the device in Minji's ear. "Welcome to the Academy. You're late." "Our transport was delayed, sir," Hana replied formally. "We apologize." "Excuses are for the dead," Vethrak said. "Follow me. Weapons inspection begins in 10 minutes. They followed him through corridors that twisted and turned in ways that confused Minji's sense of direction. Other cadets stared at them openly. Some whispered. A few pointed. Humans were still a novelty in the wider galaxy, especially humans in military uniform. The inspection hall was massive. Hundreds of cadets stood in neat rows, their weapons laid out on tables before them. Minji saw plasma rifles of every design, energy blades that hummed with power, and devices she couldn't even name. The technology on display could probably conquer Earth in an afternoon. Vethrax led them to an empty space at the back. "Display your weapons for inspection," he ordered. Taeyang opened his cases, revealing standard-issue plasma rifles, detonators, and various tools. Hana laid out her rifle and sidearm, both pristine and new. Minji unslung her sword and placed it on the table. The blade caught the light, polished steel reflecting the strange colors of the station. The commander stared at it. Then he laughed. It started as a chuckle but grew louder. Around them, other cadets turned to look. Soon the laughter spread, dozens of aliens of different species all laughing at the simple piece of steel on the table. "What is this?" Vethrax asked, still laughing. "A museum piece? Are you here to study history?" "It's my primary close-quarters weapon, sir," Minji said calmly. The laughter intensified. A cadet nearby, an insectoid creature with 6 legs, clicked its mandibles in what the translator rendered as mocking sounds. Another, a floating being of pure energy, pulsed with colors that indicated humor. "Primary weapon," Vethrax repeated, wiping one of his eyes. "Child, this is the modern age. We fight with plasma and energy. We have shields and armor that can withstand nuclear blasts. And you bring steel?" He picked up the sword, examining it like a curiosity. "This is primitive. This is what our ancestors used 10,000 years ago before we learned better." "With respect, sir, steel still cuts," Minji said. "Oh, it cuts," Vethrax agreed. "But what good is cutting when the enemy fires plasma bolts from 100 meters away? You can't block plasma with steel." "This is a battlefield, not a theatrical performance," Minji said nothing. She had expected this. Earth's military advisors had warned her that the Coalition viewed human weapons as backwards. They had plasma technology now too, gifted by the Coalition. But Earth's armies still trained with knives, with blades, with their hands. Old habits died hard. I request permission to demonstrate the weapon's effectiveness, sir, Minji said. The laughter stopped. Vethrax's 4 eyes focused on her with new interest. You want to demonstrate? Against what? Other cadets. Against your training drones, sir. Standard combat simulation. Around them, cadets whispered. A demonstration meant using the Academy's advanced combat simulator, a room that could create any battlefield scenario with holographic enemies and real weapons fire. It was used to test cadets before they graduated. Failure in the simulator often meant washing out of the program. Vethrax's mouth curved into something like a smile. Very well. Tomorrow morning, in the main arena, you will face 3 standard combat drones armed with plasma rifles. You will carry only your primitive steel. The entire Academy will watch. He leaned closer. And when you fail, perhaps Earth will send soldiers who understand modern warfare. Yes, sir, Minji said. She bowed formally, a gesture of respect from her culture. That night, in their assigned quarters, Taeyang paced nervously. 3 combat drones? Minji, those things are designed to kill. They move fast and their aim is perfect. Even with a plasma rifle, cadets fail that test. I know, Minji said. She sat on her bunk, cleaning her sword with practiced motions. The ritual calmed her. You can't actually block plasma, Taeyang continued. The commander was right about that. The energy would melt the steel. I don't plan to block it, Minji said. Hana looked up from her datapad. Deflection? Angles, Minji confirmed. Plasma travels in predictable streams. If you understand the physics, you can redirect the energy with minimal contact. The flat of the blade, proper angle, quick movement. I've trained for this. Against plasma? Taeyang asked skeptically. Against bullets, which move faster, Minji replied. The principle is the same. This is insane, Taeyang muttered, but he stopped pacing. Minji finished cleaning her blade and held it up. The steel was old but perfectly maintained. Her grandfather's hands had held this handle. Her father's blood had stained it once long ago, in a war fought on Earth. Now she would carry it into a different kind of battle, not against enemies but against perception. They think we're primitive, she said quietly. Maybe we are. But primitive doesn't mean ineffective. They forgot what real combat feels like. They fight from a distance with technology doing most of the work. We never had that luxury. We fought close, brutal, personal. Every human soldier knows what it feels like when things go wrong, when technology fails, when all you have left is yourself and whatever's in your hands. And you think that matters here? Hana asked. Minji smiled slightly. Tomorrow we find out. She lay down to sleep, her sword within reach. Outside the window, stars glittered against the black of space. Somewhere out there, humanity's homeworld spun, small and blue and seemingly insignificant, but it had produced soldiers who never forgot the oldest lessons. Tomorrow, the galaxy would get a reminder of what those lessons looked like. The arena filled quickly. Word of the demonstration had spread through the Academy overnight, and now hundreds of cadets crowded the observation levels. They came from dozens of worlds, their bodies and forms as varied as the stars themselves. But they all shared one thing in common: curiosity about the human who claimed steel could compete with plasma. Minji stood in the preparation room, breathing slowly and deeply. She wore light combat armor, standard Academy issue, but had removed the chest plate. Too much weight would slow her down. Her sword hung at her side, the leather-wrapped handle worn smooth by generations of use. Taeyang checked her equipment one last time. Communications are active. Medical sensors are reading normal. The arena's safety protocols are engaged, so if things go really bad, they'll pull you out. Things won't go bad, Minji said. The drones are military grade, Hana added, reviewing data on her pad. Response time of 0.03 seconds. Accuracy rating of 98%. They're programmed to kill. I know. Just making sure you understand what you're facing. Minji smiled. I appreciate the concern. But I've trained for worse. The door opened. Commander Vethrax entered, his forearms crossed in a gesture that seemed skeptical. Last chance to withdraw, Corporal Han. No one will think less of you for recognizing the gap between your world's capabilities and ours. With respect, sir, I think they will, Minji replied. Earth's reputation starts here. I won't be the one who ruins it by running scared. Something flickered in Vethrax's eyes. Perhaps respect, perhaps just more amusement. Very well. The arena awaits. She walked through the tunnel and into the combat zone. The space was enormous, at least 200 meters across. The simulator had generated an urban environment, ruined buildings and debris scattered everywhere. It looked like a war zone, which was probably the point. Cover was available but limited. Sight lines were clear in most directions. Above, the observation window showed countless faces watching. The arena's speakers crackled to life. Combat demonstration beginning, an automated voice announced. Participant Corporal Minji Han, Earth Defense Forces. Challenge: survive and neutralize 3 Mark 7 combat drones. Weapons: participant's choice. Timer begins on first hostile contact. Minji drew her sword. The steel sang softly as it cleared the scabbard. She moved to the center of the arena, boots crunching on simulated rubble. Her heart beat steadily. Her breathing remained calm. This was just another test, another challenge. Earth had prepared her for this in ways the aliens couldn't understand. 3 drones materialized at different positions around the arena. They were sleek machines, roughly human-sized, hovering on anti-gravity fields. Each carried a plasma rifle integrated into its frame. Red targeting lights swept across the space, searching. The first drone spotted her. Its rifle swiveled. Minji was already moving. The plasma bolt screamed through the air where she had been standing a heartbeat before. The energy burned against a concrete wall, leaving molten slag. Minji sprinted left, using a destroyed vehicle for cover. The observers above murmured. She had dodged the first shot, but everyone knew that was luck. The real test would come when multiple drones fired simultaneously. The second drone appeared on her right, rifle charging. She heard the high-pitched whine of plasma building. 3/4 of a second until discharge. She counted in her head, muscles coiled. The drone fired. Minji moved with precise timing, not away but forward and to the side. The bolt passed so close she felt the heat through her armor. But that wasn't the impressive part. The third drone fired from her left. This was the killing shot. The one she couldn't dodge because she was still recovering from her last movement. The observers saw it happening. Some looked away. Minji's sword came up at a 45-degree angle, the flat of the blade intercepting the plasma bolt's trajectory. For one impossible instant, steel met energy. The blade didn't block the plasma. Instead, it redirected it. The angle and her motion sent the bolt careening upward, the energy dispersing into the arena's ceiling shields. The arena went silent. Minji kept moving. She had perhaps 2 seconds before the drones recalculated and adjusted their tactics. She sprinted toward the nearest one, her path irregular and unpredictable. The drone tracked her but couldn't get a clean shot. Its programming expected targets to seek cover, to fight from a distance. It didn't expect someone to close distance with only a blade. She reached the drone in 4 seconds. Her sword flashed once, twice. The blade found the joints where the rifle connected to the drone's body, where armor was thinnest. The cuts were surgical and precise. The rifle sparked and died. The drone tried to retreat, but she was faster. Her third strike severed the anti-gravity generator. The machine crashed to the ground, disabled. The other 2 drones repositioned, creating crossfire. This was the scenario that killed most cadets. No matter which way you moved, one drone had a clear shot. Standard tactics said to use heavy cover and try to pick them off one at a time. Minji ran directly at the second drone. Plasma bolts filled the air. She dodged one, deflected another with her blade, took a third so close to her body that her armor's edge scorched black. But she didn't slow down. The distance closed to 10 meters, then 5. The drone's programming struggled with a target this close and this fast. It fired twice more. She deflected one and simply wasn't where the other bolt traveled. Her blade struck the drone's primary sensor array. Sparks exploded. The machine's targeting went wild, firing randomly. Minji dropped low and swept her sword through the anti-gravity housing. The drone fell, its systems scrambling to compensate for sudden flight failure. She disabled it with one final strike to its core processor. The third drone had repositioned during her assault, finding high ground on a ruined building. Smart programming. From that angle, it had clear line of sight and Minji had no cover. The targeting laser found her chest. The plasma rifle charged. She threw her sword. The blade spun through the air, not at the drone, but at a piece of metal debris hanging precariously from a damaged wall. The sword struck true. The debris fell directly into the drone's flight path. The machine had to choose: dodge the falling object or maintain its shot. It chose to dodge. The moment it moved, Minji was sprinting. She grabbed a piece of rebar from the rubble, testing its weight. The drone reacquired her target. Too slow. Minji hurled the rebar like a javelin. The metal rod wasn't sharp enough to penetrate armor, but it didn't need to be. It struck the drone's rifle, knocking the weapon's aim wide. The plasma bolt went high and left. Minji reached her sword, scooped it up, and leaped onto a pile of rubble. From there, she jumped to a ledge, then to the building where the drone hovered. The machine tried to back away, but she was already inside its minimum engagement range. Her sword found the joints, the weak points, the places where even advanced technology had vulnerabilities. The drone sparked, flickered, and died. Silence filled the arena for 3 full seconds. Then the speakers crackled. All hostile targets neutralized. Time elapsed. 4 minutes, 17 seconds. Combat demonstration complete. The observation windows erupted, not with laughter this time, but with noise. Cadets were shouting, some in their own languages that the translators struggled to keep up with. Others simply stared in disbelief. Minji stood in the center of the arena, her sword held loosely at her side. Her armor was scorched in places. Her breathing came heavier now, adrenaline fading. But she was alive, and 3 advanced combat drones lay in pieces around her. Commander Vethrax appeared in the arena entrance. He walked slowly toward her, his 4 eyes studying her with an expression she couldn't read. When he reached her, he stopped. "Explain," he said simply. "Physics, sir," Minji replied. "Plasma travels in predictable streams once fired. The energy wants to dissipate along the path of least resistance. If you intercept it at the correct angle with sufficient speed, you redirect it rather than absorbing it. The steel doesn't block the plasma. It guides it away. And the tactics? Running toward armed opponents? Human psychology, sir. We're persistence hunters by nature. We evolved to chase prey over long distances. Our tactics reflect that. Most species fight from range because it's safer. We fight at whatever range gives us the advantage." She cleaned her blade on a piece of cloth. These drones were programmed to fight opponents who behave logically, who seek cover, who engage at optimal firing distance. I didn't behave logically. I created situations their programming couldn't quickly adapt to. Vethrax was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned to face the observation windows. "Let this be your lesson today," he announced, his voice carrying through the arena. "Technology is a tool. It is not a replacement for skill, tactics, or understanding your enemy. This human defeated advanced combat drones with a piece of steel because she understood principles we've forgotten." He looked back at Minji. "Dismissed, Corporal, and well done." The summons came 3 hours after the demonstration. Minji, Taeyang, and Hana were called to the Academy's command center, a space that overlooked the entire station. High Admiral Kasara waited for them there, a being of such age that her species' name had been lost to time. She existed partially in this dimension and partially in others, her form shifting like smoke. "Sit," Kasara said, her voice resonating in ways that bypassed the translator entirely. The human sat. "I have reviewed your demonstration, Corporal Han. Quite impressive. But more importantly, I've reviewed intelligence reports from the front lines." She gestured, and holographic images filled the space. They showed battles, chaos, and dying soldiers. The enemy was unlike anything Minji had seen before. The Velkith swarm moved like living nightmares, their bodies organic but twisted, designed purely for killing. "We're losing," Kasara said bluntly. "The swarm adapts. 2 months ago, they developed biological shielding that absorbs plasma energy. Our primary weapons are becoming ineffective. Ships, ground forces, defensive positions, all struggling." The images showed coalition soldiers firing uselessly at creatures that simply absorbed the energy and grew stronger. "What does this have to do with us?" Hana asked carefully. "Your demonstration proves something I've suspected," Kasara replied. "The Coalition has spent 10,000 years perfecting technology. We've forgotten the fundamentals. We fight from a distance because we can, not because we must. And now we face an enemy that forces close combat, and we're unprepared." She looked at Minji directly. "Can you teach our soldiers what you know?" Minji blinked. "Teach? Ma'am, I'm just a corporal." "You're a soldier who understands principles that transcend technology. That's worth more than rank right now." Kasara pulled up new images, these showing training facilities. "We're establishing accelerated combat programs across all Academy branches. I want Earth's military doctrine integrated into our curriculum. Close quarters combat, melee weapons, improvisation, everything your species has learned from your constant warfare. Our constant warfare? Taeyang repeated, slightly offended. Don't misunderstand, Kasara said. I don't judge humanity for its violent history. I recognize it as practical experience. You've had no choice but to perfect ground combat because you lack the technology to avoid it. Now that experience is valuable. She leaned forward. Will you help us? The three humans looked at each other. Finally, Minji nodded. Yes, ma'am. We'll do what we can. The next morning, Minji found herself standing before 50 alien cadets in one of the Academy's training halls. They represented a dozen species. Some had 4 arms, others had tails or wings or features that defied easy description. All of them looked skeptical. I'm Corporal Minji Han, she began. I'm here to teach you close quarters combat. Before we start, I need to understand what you already know. Who here has training in hand-to-hand fighting? 3 hands went up. 3 out of 50. Who has ever been in a physical fight? Not a simulation. Real contact, 1 hand stayed up. Minji nodded slowly. That's what I thought. You've been trained to fight from a distance. Your tactics assume you'll always have working weapons and clear line of sight. But battles don't follow assumptions. Technology fails. Situations change. And when that happens, you need to know how to fight with anything available, including your own body. A Draxian cadet in the front row spoke up. His name was Thexnor, and his 4 arms were crossed in obvious disdain. We have 4 arms. Humans have 2. Why should we learn from the physically inferior? Good question, Minji said. She walked to an equipment rack and pulled out a training staff. Attack me, Thexnor hesitated. What? You have 4 arms. I have 2. By your logic, you should dominate this fight. So attack me. Show me how superior you are, the other cadets murmured. Thexnor's face darkened, but he stood and approached. He was larger than Minji, stronger, and he had twice as many limbs. He grabbed a staff and immediately swung all 4 arms at her in a flurry of strikes. Minji sidestepped the first blow, redirected the second with minimal contact, ducked under the third, and struck Thexnor's knee with her staff. He fell hard. Before he could recover, her staff was at his throat. 4 arms don't matter if you don't know how to use them together, Minji said. You attacked with all 4 at once, which means you have no defense and no balance. A human child could trip you. She offered him a hand up. Strength and numbers are advantages, but only if combined with technique. That's what I'm here to teach. Over the following weeks, the training intensified. Minji worked with the cadets every day, breaking down movements into simple components. She taught them how to fall properly, how to use momentum against larger opponents, how to identify weak points in any body structure. Ryun Kang, another human instructor who had arrived with reinforcements from Earth, specialized in teaching the more complex techniques. He was a martial arts master, his body covered in scars from decades of training and real combat. He taught the insectoid Chithar species how to use their natural mandibles as weapons. He showed the floating ethel beings how to use their energy manipulation in close range, rather than from a distance. Everything is a weapon, Ryun told his class one day. He held up a simple metal cup. This cup, a weapon. This chair, a weapon. Your helmet, your boots, a rock from the ground. If you understand leverage and force application, anything becomes dangerous. Taeyang ran separate classes on improvised explosives and environmental tactics. Your enemy expects you to fight fair, he explained. But there's no such thing as fair in war. There's winning and dying. If you can collapse a building on the enemy instead of shooting them, that's smart, not cowardly. The cultural clash was significant. Many alien species had concepts of honor in combat that made them hesitant to use what they called underhanded tactics. The Draxians especially struggled with this. One evening, Thexnor approached Minji after training. His earlier hostility had faded, replaced by genuine confusion. Instructor Han, why do humans fight this way? With deception and tricks and using the environment against enemies? Where is the honor? Minji considered the question carefully. What is honor to you? Facing your opponent directly, testing skill against skill, giving them a chance to surrender or win fairly. And if they don't surrender? If they want to kill you and everyone you're protecting? Then you fight with honor and accept the outcome. Minji shook her head. That's not honor. That's pride. Honor means protecting those who depend on you. It means finishing the fight so you can go home. If I fight fair and die, I've failed everyone counting on me. My squad, my family, my people. That's not honorable. That's selfish. But humans have codes of conduct in war. Thexnor protested. We've studied your history. Geneva Conventions. Rules of engagement. We do, Minji agreed. We don't torture prisoners. We don't target civilians. We don't use certain weapons because they cause unnecessary suffering. Those rules exist because we understand how terrible war is. But they don't require us to give the enemy advantages. Fighting smart isn't dishonorable. It's survival. The conversation spread among the cadets. Slowly, perspectives began to shift. They started asking questions about Earth's military history, about the wars humans had fought. Hana gave lectures on tactics, showing how human armies had adapted and evolved through centuries of conflict. You had peace, Hana explained to one class. For thousands of years you've lived in a galaxy where conflicts were rare and usually solved with superior technology. You forgot what it means to fight when you're desperate, when you're outnumbered, when you have nothing but your wits and whatever's in your hands. She pulled up images of human history. Ancient warriors with bronze weapons, medieval knights in armor, soldiers in trenches, modern special forces. We never stopped fighting. We refined it. We studied it. We learned from every defeat and every victory. You think we're primitive because we still carry knives into battle. We think we're prepared because we know guns jam and power cells die, and sometimes all you have left is steel and determination. As weeks passed, the change in the cadets became obvious. They moved differently, with more awareness of their surroundings. They stopped relying solely on their weapons. In simulations, their survival rates improved dramatically. Commander Vethrax observed one of Minji's classes and approached her afterward. "You're changing how they think," he said. "That's the point, sir." "I included," Vethrax admitted. "I've started training with the knife you humans gave me. It feels strange, but also right somehow, like remembering something I never knew I'd forgotten." "Your ancestors knew these things," Minji said. "Every species had to start somewhere. You just had the luxury of moving past it. We never did." "Is it luxury?" Vethrax wondered. "Or have we lost something essential?" Before Minji could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Red lights flashed. The automated voice announced, "Alert, Velketh swarm detected. Multiple contacts. Battle stations, the training was over. Now they would find out if the lessons had been learned well enough." The Velketh swarm hit Terminus 7 like a biological nightmare. Ships that looked like twisted organs dropped from the sky, spilling creatures that defied any sane description. They were all teeth and claws and pulsing flesh, designed by evolution or engineering to kill efficiently. Minji stood in the Academy's command center, watching holographic displays show the battle unfolding below. Coalition warships fired plasma weapons that the swarm creatures simply absorbed. Their organic bodies converted the energy into fuel, making them stronger with every shot. It was like watching soldiers trying to kill fire by feeding it oxygen. "They're adapting faster than predicted," High Admiral Kasara said, her form flickering with what might have been stress. "The defense perimeter won't hold. We need to evacuate civilians from the settlement." "What about the fleet?" Commander Vethrax asked, pulling back. "Their weapons are worse than useless. They're actually making the enemy stronger." Kasara turned to the humans. "Your assessment, Corporal Han?" Minji studied the displays. "Ground combat. The swarm is forcing it. They want close engagement where plasma weapons don't work. That's their strategy, which means we're fighting on their terms," Vethrax said grimly. "No, sir," Minji replied. "It means we're finally fighting on ours." The Academy deployed within the hour. Transport ships carried cadets and instructors to the planet's surface, where coalition forces were establishing a defensive perimeter around the civilian evacuation zone. The position was a nightmare of urban combat. Ruined buildings, tight spaces, and limited sight lines. Perfect for the swarm, terrible for long-range plasma warfare. Minji's group landed in a section of the city that had already seen fighting. Bodies lay scattered, both alien coalition soldiers and swarm creatures. The smell was overwhelming, a mix of burned flesh and something acidic that made her eyes water. "Form up," she shouted. Her group consisted of 20 cadets she'd been training. Mixed species with varying levels of close-quarters experience. Thexnor was there, along with several others she'd worked with closely. They looked terrified but determined. Taeyang's voice crackled over the communications channel. "Setting charges on the western approach. If they come through here, they're getting a building dropped on them." "Copy that," Minji replied.
Hana, status.
"Coordinating with Coalition Command. They're routing wounded to evac points, but the swarm is pushing hard. Multiple breakthroughs in sectors 4 and 7. A scream cut through the air. Minji turned to see a swarm creature burst from a building. It was the size of a horse with 6 legs and a mouth that opened sideways. The thing moved impossibly fast. "Contact!" Minji shouted, drawing her sword. The cadets raised their plasma rifles and fired. The bolts hit the creature dead on. For a moment it staggered. Then its flesh absorbed the energy, pulsing with new strength. The creature grew larger, its armor thickening. "Cease fire," Minji ordered. "Switch to physical weapons now!" The cadets hesitated, their training fighting their instincts. Texnor was the first to react. He dropped his rifle and pulled out the combat knife he'd been practicing with. The other cadets followed his example, drawing blades and staffs and whatever close combat weapons they carried. The creature charged. Minji met it head-on. Her sword flashed, finding the joints where the creature's armor was weakest. Black blood sprayed. The thing shrieked and swiped at her with claws that could tear through steel. She rolled under the strike and came up cutting. Her blade severed tendons. The creature collapsed, still dangerous but crippled. "Finish it," she ordered. The cadets swarmed the creature, their weapons finding vital spots. It took 10 seconds of brutal close-range butchery, but the thing finally stopped moving. The cadets stared at the corpse, then at their weapons, then at each other. They were covered in alien blood and breathing hard, but they were alive. "That's how you fight them," Minji said. "No plasma. Physical weapons only. Aim for joints, sensory organs, anything that looks vulnerable. Work together. Don't let them isolate you." More screams echoed through the ruins. The battle was spreading. Commander Vethrax's position was 3 blocks north. His unit had been ambushed by a swarm pack, the creatures pouring from underground tunnels. His soldiers fired their plasma weapons instinctively, and every shot made the enemy stronger. The situation collapsed into chaos within seconds. Vethrax found himself separated from his unit, surrounded by 3 swarm creatures. His rifle was empty and useless. He drew his sidearm, knowing it wouldn't help. The creatures sensed his fear and moved closer, their mouths opening to reveal rows of teeth. A blade flashed through the air. Minji's sword took one creature in the eye, the blade punching through the softer tissue and into what passed for its brain. The creature collapsed. Minji landed beside Vethrax and tossed him a combat knife. "You wanted modern warfare, Commander?" she said, breathing hard. "Welcome to the oldest war there is." The other 2 creatures charged. Vethrax stared at the knife in his hands. He'd trained with it for weeks but never actually used it in real combat. Every instinct screamed at him to find a gun, to fight from a distance. Minji engaged one creature, her movements precise and brutal. That left one for Vethrax. The thing lunged at him. His 4 arms moved without conscious thought, the training taking over. He sidestepped, used his lower arms to deflect claws, and drove the knife into the creature's throat with his upper right hand. The blade found something vital. The creature's shriek turned to a gurgle, but it wasn't dead. It thrashed, trying to dislodge him. Vethrax held on, using techniques Minji had drilled into him. Use your weight. Control the enemy's movement. Find another vital spot. His lower left hand grabbed his service knife and he drove it into the creature's eye socket. The thing finally went still. Minji finished her opponent and turned to find Vethrax standing over his kill, all 4 hands covered in black blood. "Not bad for your first time, sir." "I feel sick," Vethrax admitted. "That's normal. You'll get used to it." She pulled him toward his unit's position. "Come on, your soldiers need you." The battle raged for 6 hours. The coalition forces slowly adapted to the new reality. Plasma weapons were abandoned. Soldiers fought with knives, improvised clubs, and their own natural weapons. The Chithar used their mandibles to tear into swarm flesh. The Draxians learned that 4 arms meant 4 knives. Even the floating ethel beings discovered they could use their energy manipulation to crush rather than burn. Taeyang's improvised explosives proved devastating. Buildings collapsed on swarm forces. Debris became weapons. The environment itself turned against the creatures, but the cost was horrific. Coalition soldiers died by the hundreds. These were beings who had trained for clean technological warfare. Close combat against creatures bred for killing was a nightmare they'd never imagined. Even with human training, many weren't ready. Minji's sword broke during a fight with a swarm brute, a creature twice her size with armor like stone. The blade snapped against its hide. Without hesitation, she grabbed a piece of rebar from the rubble and used it like a spear, driving it through the creature's eye and into its brain. The brute fell, and Minji stood there holding a piece of rusty metal, her family's 400-year-old sword lying in pieces at her feet. She felt nothing about it. The sword was a tool, Tools broke. What mattered was survival. By the time evacuation was complete, the coalition forces had lost 40% of their ground troops. But they'd held. The swarm pulled back, perhaps surprised by the resistance, perhaps simply regrouping. Minji sat on a pile of rubble, exhausted. Her armor was ruined, her body covered in cuts and bruises. Around her, surviving soldiers tended to wounded or simply stared at nothing, processing what they'd experienced. Vethrax limped over and sat beside her. His own armor was gone, his blue skin marked with burns and cuts. "We won," he said quietly. "We survived," Minji corrected. "There's a difference. Your sword. I saw it break. Yes, I'm sorry. I know it was important to you." Minji looked at the broken blade still lying where it had fallen. "It served its purpose. My grandfather would understand." She smiled tiredly. "Besides, now I know it's possible to break. Good information to have. How do you do this?" Vethrax asked. "How do you fight like this and stay sane?" "Who says we stay sane?" Minji replied. "We just get good at pretending." Above them, the sky began to lighten. Dawn on Terminus 7, the first day of a new kind of war. 3 months after the Battle of Terminus 7, the Galactic Combat Academy looked different. The training halls that once echoed with the hum of plasma weapons now rang with the clash of steel and the impact of bodies against training mats. Cadets from dozens of worlds learned to fight with their hands, with blades, with anything they could grab. The change had been mandated from the highest levels of Coalition command. Minji stood in her new office reviewing training reports. The title on her door read, Combat Instructor, First Class, Close Quarters Combat Division. It still felt strange. 3 months ago, she'd been a corporal. Now she was shaping the Coalition's entire approach to warfare. A knock interrupted her thoughts. "Enter," she called. Commander Vethrax stepped inside. He looked different now, leaner and harder. The soft edges that came from decades of technological warfare had been worn away by brutal experience. "Instructor Han, do you have a moment?" "Of course, Commander. What do you need?" Vethrax placed a long, wrapped bundle on her desk. "I wanted to give you this before the ceremony tonight." Well, you should open it." Minji unwrapped the bundle carefully. Inside was a blade, roughly the same length as her broken sword but different in design. The metal was unfamiliar, dark and shot through with veins of blue that seemed to pulse with internal light. The handle was wrapped in material that felt like leather but wasn't quite. The craftsmanship was extraordinary. "This is Draxian steel," Vethrax explained, "forged from the hull of my family's warship. It's been in service for 300 years. I had the ship's smiths reforge it into this blade. It's not a replacement for what you lost. Nothing could be. But I wanted you to have something that represents what you've taught us." Minji held the blade, testing its weight and balance. It was perfect. "Commander, I can't accept this. This is your family's legacy." "And you honored it by teaching me how to fight," Vethrax replied. "Before Terminus 7, I thought I was a soldier. I wore the uniform, I carried weapons, I gave orders. But I'd never actually fought. Not really. You showed me what combat truly means, what it costs. This blade is my thanks and my apology for mocking your steel when you first arrived. You weren't wrong," Minji said quietly. "You can't block plasma with steel, but you can fight with it. There's a difference. A difference I understand now." Vethrax's 4 eyes met hers seriously. "The reports from the front lines are changing. Swarm advances are slowing. Our soldiers are holding positions that would have fallen months ago. Your tactics, your training, it's making a difference across the entire war." "It's not just my tactics," Minji corrected. "Ryun and Taeyang deserve equal credit. And Hana's tactical analysis has revolutionized how we approach urban combat. The 4 of you, then. Earth's contribution to this war." Vethrax moved toward the door, then paused. "The ceremony tonight will formalize the new combat doctrine. They're calling it the Han Doctrine. High Admiral Kasara wanted you to know in advance." After he left, Minji sat alone with the new blade. She thought about her grandfather's sword, the steel that had served 4 generations and finally broke, protecting her life. That weapon was gone, but what it represented continued. The knowledge passed down through centuries. The understanding that some principles never changed, no matter how advanced technology became. The ceremony that evening filled the Academy's main hall. Hundreds of cadets and instructors attended, representing the Coalition's diverse species. High Admiral Kasara presided, her form more solid than Minji had ever seen it. The Battle of Terminus 7 taught us a critical lesson, Kasara began. We had become dependent on technology to the point of weakness. We believed that superior weapons guaranteed victory. The swarm proved us wrong. They adapted to our plasma weapons and turned our strength into our vulnerability. The assembled crowd listened in silence. Many had fought at Terminus 7, others had heard the stories. Humanity showed us a different path, Kasara continued, not because they're more advanced, but because they never forgot the fundamentals. They understand that technology serves the warrior, not the other way around, that a soldier's true weapon is their mind, their body, and their will. Everything else is just tools. She gestured to where Minji, Taeyang, Hana, and Ryun stood. These 4 humans have revolutionized our military doctrine. They've taught us that old methods aren't primitive. They're foundational. That knowing how to fight with your hands doesn't mean you're backwards, it means you're prepared for when technology fails. Kasara pulled up holographic displays showing battle statistics. Since implementing human combat training across our forces, casualty rates have dropped by 38%. Mission success rates have increased by 52%. Swarm advances have been halted in 14 sectors and reversed in 6. The numbers don't lie. This approach works. She looked directly at Minji. Effective immediately, all coalition military personnel will undergo close-quarters combat certification. Physical weapons training will be mandatory. Environmental tactics and improvised weapons will be standard curriculum. This new doctrine, which we're officially designating the Integrated Combat Protocol, will ensure that our soldiers are never again helpless when their technology fails them. The crowd erupted in applause, though Minji noticed it wasn't universal. Some cadets, particularly those from species that had never embraced physical combat, looked uncomfortable. Change was never easy, especially when it challenged fundamental assumptions about superiority and progress. After the ceremony, Minji found herself surrounded by cadets asking questions. A young Chithar wanted to know how humans had developed such effective knife-fighting techniques. A Draxian asked about the philosophy behind human martial arts, and Ethel being wondered if their energy manipulation could be adapted to human close combat principles. She answered each question patiently, aware that she was helping shape the future of coalition warfare. These cadets would become instructors themselves, spreading the knowledge further. Thexnor approached, looking somewhat embarrassed. "Instructor Han, I wanted to apologize again for my behavior when you first arrived. I was arrogant and stupid." "You were confident in your training," Minji replied. "That's not the same as stupid. And you learned. That's what matters. I've been thinking about what you said, about honor meaning finishing the fight, not fighting fair. It's changed how I approach everything." He paused. "I'm being assigned to a frontline unit next month. I wanted to thank you for making sure I'd survive it. Stay sharp, keep training, and remember that survival isn't about being the strongest or the fastest. It's about being smart and adaptable." She clasped his shoulder. "You'll do fine." As the evening wore on, Minji stepped outside onto one of the station's observation decks. The stars spread before her in all directions, countless worlds locked in a war against an enemy that wanted to consume everything. It was overwhelming when she thought about it too much. Taeyang joined her, carrying 2 drinks. "Thought you might need this." "Thanks." She took the cup, some kind of alien beverage that tasted vaguely like fruit. Weird how things change, isn't it? 3 months ago they were laughing at us. Now we're reshaping their entire military. "Because they finally realized they needed what we know," Taeyang replied. "We're not better than them. We just have experience they lack. Experience earned through our species' inability to stop killing each other," Minji said quietly. "Is that something to be proud of?" "Maybe not proud, but we can be useful. We survived our own violence. Now we help them survive theirs." Taeyang looked out at the stars. "Besides, we're teaching them more than just how to fight. We're teaching them humility. That advanced doesn't mean superior. That old doesn't mean obsolete. Those are good lessons for any species." Hana appeared, looking exhausted. "I just finished analyzing the latest combat reports. The swarm is changing tactics again. They're pulling back from sectors where we've implemented the new training and focusing on areas that haven't adapted yet. They're smart," Minji said. "Avoiding strength, exploiting weakness. Classic tactics. Which means we need to spread the training faster," Hana replied. "Command wants us to develop accelerated programs. Get every coalition soldier up to basic proficiency within 6 months." Ryun, who had been listening, shook his head. 6 months isn't enough to master close combat. These aliens have literally never been in a real physical fight. Then we teach them enough to survive and keep learning, Minji said. Perfect technique comes later. Right now, we just need them to understand the principles. How to move, how to think, how to use what's available. They stood together. 4 humans who'd come to the stars expecting to be students and instead became teachers. Below them, through the station's transparent sections, training continued even at this late hour. Cadets sparred with practice weapons, learning techniques that humanity had developed through millennia of conflict. Do you think we'll win? Taeyang asked quietly. I think we'll survive, Minji replied, and keep adapting. That's what humans do best. The swarm is learning to counter plasma weapons, so we teach everyone how to fight without them. If the swarm adapts to that, we'll find something else. We're not smarter or stronger or more advanced, but we're persistent. We don't quit. The galaxy's worst students but best survivors, Hana said with a slight smile.